My name is Michael Coates. I'm a former firefighter, but I'm also a former soldier. And it's the stories from the individuals within this military community that I'm desperate to document. Born in Afghanistan, his father was a doctor, mother a midwife, and uncle a Taliban member. When conflict struck, his father was killed. His choice, become a US informant or become a member of the Taliban himself. Aged 12, he travelled 11,000 miles to find his brother, safety and peace. A refugee, a campaigner, a human. Episode 20, Gulwali Passarley. This is Declassified. Can you remember your early part of your childhood? What's the earliest memory?
I think I remember the earliest memory has been actually when I was very little, being in the mountains with my grandparents. That's the earliest I remember. And actually, the earliest I remember was we were moving a house from one part of the district to another, and I was so little that I could only carry the things that you put, cups in, like the tray, the plastic tray.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I remember being able to carry it. Probably I was, 4 or 5. So yeah, but the fond memories I have is being in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan with my grandparents as a shepherd. We had sheep and goats and animals.
And that's what was it your grandfather? Was
My
he a
grandparents
shepherd?
And my grandma as well as my grandfather, yeah.
Yeah. And you was born in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
2000, you were 6, you started going to school. Is that when you came back from the mountains back into the family home?
Yeah, I spent about 3 years being in the mountains from age 4 till perhaps age 7. In winter, we will go to warm part of the region. We will just go for days with the animals. And in summer, we will stay in the mountains. And then we came back to our village and family home in the district. And I had to start school, I was around 7. And life changed thereafter.
When was the first time? I think it was NATO troops at the time, around 2001. Well, I don't think it was I think it was NATO troops that first came into Afghanistan in 2001. When was your first memory of troops coming in?
Early on, so we were living in a very conservative pro-Taliban region. And so when the Taliban was kind of collapsing their government, leaving, I think ours was one of the last stronghold where I think fighters from Kabul was going through towards Jalalabad.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of Taliban fighters in our homes, and it was a big deal. And I saw troops for the first time in our district, perhaps as early as 2002. Because when the Taliban government collapsed, there was local militias and local warlords took over the district and the governance of it.
Well, let's take it back a little bit then. So, the family home. What did your dad do for a living?
So my father was a doctor, and my uncles were businessmen, and we had shops in the districts, and we had a lot of farmlands. We used to grow opium. We used to grow marijuana and all sorts of things, and as well as wheat and corns and vegetables. But my grandparents, as I said, they were farmers, and as well as my grandfather was a very well-known religious. He was not a religious leader. He was a tribal leader where he used to do a lot of. He solved a lot of issues in the community, where the jarga, which involves elders from different tribes and communities coming together, resolving conflicts.
Yeah. So this is the funny thing. This is that perception of, especially from someone from the UK. So your uncle was in the Taliban.
Sure, yeah. So
and that's quite normal, was it?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about it, it's a big deal here. But there it was not a big deal. Actually, it was being from places like Afghanistan. You gotta choose sides when whatever government there is, you have to pick sides. And I think my family was not very happy about it, particularly my father and my grandfather, about him being involved. But the Taliban, although were very undemocratic forces, but at the same time they had people from every part of the country. Almost every family in my region had somebody in the Taliban.
Yeah.
And that's why they were so successful, because family will not revolt against them because they had people in their ranks. And so my uncle was in the Taliban, and my father previously was part of the Mujahideen. He was a fighter against the Soviet Union, and not only a fighter, but he was mainly a doctor as well, treating fighters. So there was a long history in my family of resistance, in a sense. And the Taliban was seen as a force for good, according to my family. My grandparents and my father thought it was the best time of their lives in terms of security and stability and peace. I mean, my dad used to say that he could leave his drugstore, his pharmacy shop open, and nobody will take anything. And there was this feeling where if somebody really needed a medicine, and they could actually go and take it, like, and pay for it without anybody being in the shop. So it was a really interesting time for them, because before that there was a civil war. Millions of people lost their lives during the Russian occupation. So we need to look at it from the context. I'm not here being a Taliban spokesperson. There is no place for Taliban in our society today, but at the same time, we have to realize what was happening before 1994, where there was a civil war. 1 million Afghans were killed. Before that, about 3 million Afghans were killed during the Russian 8 years occupation. And Afghanistan was in the hands of warlords. There was no central government. There was no central authority. And it was lawlessness. So the Taliban came and put an end to it. And people welcomed it. And my family was happy to give their liberty and freedom in return for security.
It's just something we don't hear about. And there's always two sides to this. To the story,
Sure.
And our media has swayed things and experiences have influenced us as well, and it's really interesting again hearing from your point there. So was the, I suppose, I know you was young as well, so it's not always clear cut. You can't see everything, but from experiences and what you've researched after and your family members have spoke to you about, was it almost safer before 2001? Is
Indeed.
it safer with the Taliban?
Yeah, so when we were in the mountains, when we had sheep and goats, and we felt relatively safe. We didn't have like guns or anything. My granddad, he used to have like, old machine gun, but we didn't see the need to use it because things were really safe. Yes, the Taliban has scared people. The Taliban done things with an iron stick. Yeah. There was a huge punishment for small things you have done. Like if you steal, they will cut your hands. So there was a sense of course, amongst people, there was a sense of fear to not do anything wrong. But at the same time, people property was saved, people livelihood was saved. And since the Taliban has gone, we have over 100,000 people dying. Last year was 17,000 casualties. So the things has not improved in terms of security in people's lives. Right now, nobody's life is safe in Afghanistan. I mean, we saw in Kandahar, the most strong, powerful police chief was killed. And we see people dying across Afghanistan, really powerful individuals, but also families. And so just recently there's been fighting in central Afghanistan. There's one of the most peaceful district called Jaghuri in Ghazni province, which has been kind of run by the Taliban. And in the last few years, the Taliban has actually taken many cities, big cities like Kunduz, like Ghazni and Farah. They have been able to infiltrate big cities. So the situation has not improved, and it's unfortunate that with all this money and troops and investments, corruption is at its highest, and we are run by warlords and people who are supposed to be in The Hague for their crimes rather than running our country. I mean, our first vice president was accused of crimes against humanity, and he's now the first vice president. What can you do about it?
Well, I suppose that's what we'll some of the points we'll address today. But I want to go back to that kind of little boy as well, and go back to the family home. And when did you ever feel, kind of 2004, 2003, you're getting a little bit older, did you ever feel like you was vulnerable? Did you ever feel unsafe at that point in time?
Indeed. So my family tried to live a very neutral life because the Taliban government was collapsed. Everybody knew that my uncle was involved, and he had to actually flee the country. I think he went over to Pakistan. So my father would treat Taliban fighters when they came to our homes, or him to treat them when they were injured, and he would treat Afghan forces or Afghan militias, because he saw it as his moral duty as a doctor not to question people's political views and backgrounds. And also, he was not really able to, because the Taliban was powerful, so does the militias. So either way, we couldn't really win. So he was trying to be, that neutral person there. We didn't.
A humanitarian.
A humanitarian, indeed. And that actually cost him his life. And so things became so bad for our family, where we were accused by the Americans and the Afghan forces of siding with the Taliban, and the Taliban accused us of siding with the Americans and the Afghan forces. So we were in a situation we couldn't really win, and I lost members of my family and my loved ones, unfortunately. And there is no one in Afghanistan. I have never met anybody who have not lost someone, their loved ones in the war, if not in the last 17 years, but definitely in the last 30 to 35 years.
What's because it must have been a big hit. That talk about your dad for a little bit. And we spoke about this on the phone before that, and makes you feel uncomfortable talking about your dad, and we kind of came to a conclusion where actually, if this is going to be a voice, if you're going to be a voice today for those people that have died, I felt like it was important to speak about it. I hope you feel the same way. And
sure, I think it's important, but it's an incident. I mean, I explained it in my book, but it has changed my life and changed my family's life. But ultimately, it's not just about my father or my grandfather and my uncles and my relatives, but it's about every Afghans who have lost a loved one in this endless war. And sometimes the issue we have is when Americans kills Afghans, they could just stamp it with any rubber stamp saying, oh, you're a Taliban sympathizer, or you're a supporter of the Taliban, or you're actually a Taliban member, or whatever. And then there is no justice, there's no accountability. And that's what really troubles me, because Afghans have been killed right, left and center, either by the Afghan forces or by the warlords or by the US forces. And then there is no questions of why and how. If somebody is guilty, bring them to justice, bring them to the court, let them go through the system. But unfortunately, Afghanistan is a place where people who commit crimes are in government, who are in influential position, people who are trying to live their lives and trying to support their families are most vulnerable. And I'm hoping, I've been working with the Afghan Human Rights Organization and others, trying to bring about a case to the UN International Criminal Court in The Hague on war crimes and crimes against humanity being committed by the Afghan government, by the Taliban, as well as by the US and foreign forces. And it's been quite difficult getting testimonies and getting victims' reports from people in Afghanistan. And as I said, almost every family has been affected some ways.
Let's talk. Well, let's get personal then, because we've been very general, and I actually want to. This is your story, although you're being a voice for others, and I want. How did you feel? Say as much as little as you want, but I suppose what I'm asking is how did your dad die, and then how did you and your family feel? Was you bitter about it? What was the circumstance around your dad dying?
So the situation was such that the US forces came to our house many times, trying to look for Taliban fighters or look for weapons and so on. And there were people in the district where they were not very happy with us having a standing, even though after the Taliban government has gone, having the respect and been able to live there in such a way. So we were kind of being accused, and there were also things was alleged against my family. And one of the issue with the US forces is that they went into homes without respecting people's cultures and people's customs. And so once they came a few times, and the last time they came, they wanted to fight, and they got a fight. So my family, even though we knew we can't really win against them, but we were not willing to give up our dignity and our pride.
Okay.
Because when the US forces come into your house and disrespect your woman and not respect your values and culture, then as an Afghan, as a Pashtun, you ought to give your life for that. It's a very dishonoring thing to do. So I was not there at the occasion, and I have heard very little from my mother and my family. And this is something, growing up in Afghanistan as a child. Thereafter, it was one of the saddest incidents in my life. But all I wanted to do was to take revenge, and I knew I can't really win against the U.S. forces. There were like 100,000 of them. But being an Afghan child is a huge sentiment of growing up as as fighting against those invaders and occupiers. And also being a Pashtun, there's a notion called Pashtunwali. It's a code of conduct, unwritten code of conduct. Things like honor and revenge are central aspects of it. And so no matter, there's a Pashto saying, if you take revenge after 100 years, you have done it too quickly. So the blood field goes on forever, but then the circumstance and situation we were faced was very different to other blood fields and things was happening. So the Taliban put full advantage of the situation and the grievances that we were feeling and we were faced with to recruit us, to make us fighters.
So you're saying the American forces killed
my family members,
family members in a kind of mini battle, I suppose.
Sure.
And then the Taliban saw the vulnerability and came in and tried to recruit you.
Yeah, they knew my family very well, and they said, look, you guys have two choices, either to work with us or to work against us. And by working with us, you will be able to not only take revenge for your loved ones, but you will be doing even you will be fighting for even a greater cause, which is to free the country from those invaders and occupiers. So a lot of the time when young Afghans, become fighters, is because of those vulnerabilities and because of circumstances they've been put through by the foreign forces. And a lot of the time, when their family members are killed, they don't have an option other than to go and become fighters. And a lot of the time, there has been a situation where young Afghans have become suicide bombers.
Yeah, is that why then? Is it because of that understanding of not understanding, but that need to take vengeance, that where people, and in brackets terrorists, are then formed, and then opposing kind of troops, I suppose, emerge because of that?
Sure, I think it's certainly true.
Vengeance.
Well, certainly true to an extent, but I think there are, of course, elements of religious extremism and brainwashing. But at the same time, this sentiment of fighting for your country, and because we fought the British 3 times in the 1800s. The Afghan education is full of things that makes us like warriors and makes us fighter, which is very unfortunate because we are normal human beings. We love peace-loving people, but we have made to be fighters and warriors, and that's really problematic. And at the same time, we had to realize that why would somebody go and blow themselves up? Because in most cases they don't have any other choice, because they've been either forced by the Taliban to do it because of whatever reasons, and certainly sometimes it's because if I have stayed in Afghanistan and if I have went with the Taliban, I would have perhaps become a suicide bomber. Who knows? Because I knew we can't really win against the American, and I wanted to take revenge. And one of the way it could have been is blowing myself up. It's difficult to say, now looking back, but blowing myself up and killing a few Americans, that would have satisfied my honor and my dignity in my family. I'm someone who I can't even kill a small instinct. I'm a small thing, and to be put in that situation, to become violent, to become extremist because of circumstances and events out of your control. I was very young. I was 10 and 11 at the time.
Your mother and grandmother saw this. They saw the danger you and it was just your brother at the time. You and your brother was in. We were these two sides. 2006, they sat you down. They had a conversation, and it was deemed that it was the right kind of course of action to send you away.
Indeed. And we were not very happy about it because at the time we were in negotiations. Even though as kids, we had to run our family businesses because our uncle was arrested and imprisoned. And so we had to run our family businesses and deal with people and as well as the Taliban. And we were trying to play a kind of a game between not taking sides as such, but then we knew we had to take sides. And we didn't want to repeat what has happened to our family not taking side. We thought it was important to take side. But the U.S. forces, especially the Afghan government, were really keen to make us become informants. They were taking also advantage of our unfortunate situation. They said
because of the lack of men, I suppose, in the
family, but also they knew that we were kind of collaborating or wanting to work with the Taliban, and the Taliban was after us. So there was an understanding on both sides, and the situation was such that we couldn't win. We were trying to play them both sides because being children and having the innocence, we were able to play them on both sides. But it was becoming really dangerous. We used to get visits from the Taliban members. We used to get visits from the U.S. Afghan government, and people who used to work, Afghans working for the U.S. Intelligence used to come. And so we were in a situation where it was really bizarre, and we could have ended up making really bad decisions. So when my mother and grandmother wanted to send us away, the concern me and my brother had was forget about our lives. What's going to happen to the family?
Yeah.
Whatever, no matter how young we were still responsible adults.
Was it stressful for you then as a child?
It was, yeah. We were not.
How old was you?
I was about 11 or 12 at the time. I think 11 or so. When the decision was kind of being made, and I wanted to stay because I thought it was a very dishonorable thing to do, to leave my family in such a miserable and difficult situation.
Yeah.
Running away wasn't the option. And that's what I'm trying to explain to people. When people say, why you come here, when you see things about anti-refugees and anti-migrants and so on, I'm like, I didn't want to come here. I wanted to be with my family and my loved ones. And I knew the consequences would have been pretty bad. Yeah. But at the same time, I knew that I couldn't just leave them to nobody.
Yeah. So there was, even at that age, there was a sense of responsibility, like almost overwhelming. That's what I'm getting from you.
Sure, I think that I was an adult before my time. From a very young age, we were expected in the family to be responsible adults. And that was, again, not a very nice thing because once like aged 8 or so, I learned to become a tailor. Age 9, I was able to manage businesses and things. And so we were grown up in a family where we were very business-minded, entrepreneurial, and very responsible. And so there were times where my father would be busy, my uncles would be busy, and we would be dealing with like really respectful elders and people visiting us from different parts. And so we were kind of an adults before our grown-up times.
And I think that I mean, the next 12 months, even as an adult, I can't imagine it. I genuinely cannot imagine myself as 35 years old as I am now doing what you did as a 11, 12-year-old. And indeed, your mother or grandmother sent you away for your own good, so you could kind of flee the danger. In that 12 months, you travelled 11,000 miles. You went through, and you doubled back on yourself several times, but you went through Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Bulgaria, Greece, Italy, Germany, Belgium, France, and ended up in the UK. Go right back to the Afghan section of it. What was it like, those initial, I suppose, few hours, few days of leaving?
It was really feeling a lot of unease and uncertainty. And I didn't really understood the extent this was serious. I didn't take it seriously. I thought this was just some sort of, my mom is taking us away from the danger, and maybe because she knew we were putting ourselves and our family in great danger by being at home. And so I thought she was just sending us somewhere to our relatives over in the travel areas. We had family, my auntie, and we had family members living in Waziristan, which was actually a more dangerous place than Afghanistan for militants and for training camps and all sorts of things. So it was a bit strange. And when we went over to the travel areas and then to Peshawar, and then finally when we were kind of handed over to smugglers and traffickers.
Was that you and your brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a year or two older than me, Hazrat. And so things became serious. And my mom said to us, don't come back, no matter how bad it gets. And secondly, hold on to each other's hands. But then as soon as the journey wasn't even begun, me and my brother were separated. So I had to put my full trust in the mercy and hands of those smugglers and traffickers, which I realized along the way they were pretty heartless people.
Those words from your mother are powerful, holding your brother's hand, and then I'm just thinking about my children now and the situation your mother must have been in to have that conversation. It sounds daft, you don't even need to answer it, but did you feel like you'd let your mother down by not keeping with your brother?
This is the thing. Well, on the journey there was situations where what kept me going was faith and hope, of course, but also not letting my mom's down and the determination to find my brother, because I didn't see him for the next 14 months. And actually, now reflecting back on it, I think it was a very smart move by the smugglers. Because
did they separate you?
They have separated us. And they told me that I'm going to see him at the next destination, but I didn't see him when I arrived in Iran. I think, to be honest, they've done something very intelligent, because if we had stayed together, we would have been separated at some point anyway. And the journey, there was a situation where I got separated from my very close travel companions and friends, but also we wouldn't have been able to see each other suffer so much. Yeah. And I think being separated gave us the determination, to both of us perhaps, to find each other. And then maybe if we were with each other, maybe it would have been a more comfortable situation, and then makes us not take so much risks along the way. So I think it was a smart move by the smugglers.
So just keeping desperate, I suppose. Desperate to not let your mum down. Desperate to find your brother. How did you cover the distance?
So we in Iran, when I arrived in Iran, I was lost. I mean, first time I left the country, and then here I was, a beautiful country, but then language was quite difficult, and also met other Afghan refugees and people trying to comfort me. But I was keep looking for my brother, and I was really frustrated. I was upset. I was sad. I actually cried many times on this journey, even though I was trying to,
I bet you did.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to be an adult, trying to, stay strong and stay focused, but it was difficult. So I traveled across Iran. The smuggler took us around and took us a few weeks before crossing the border to Turkey, on foot all night, walking all night in mountains. And then, my hope was at some stage I will meet my brother, because I met so many Afghan refugees along the way, but my brother was nowhere to be seen.
Was you paying the smugglers as you went along? So did you leave home with money?
Well, that's
goods?
An interesting point. So, there's a lot of details in the Lightless Sky. So basically, smuggling is a huge business. It's like, let's say it as a company where they have a CEO, they have directors, and they have country representatives and so on. I realized all those things along the way, and the smuggling is a multi-billion, trillion-pound industry, and they made money out of people's desperations. And so my family had paid about $8,000 to get me to Europe. And that's a lot of money in Afghanistan. I mean, that's a lot of money even here. Yeah. So perhaps we would have sold a lot of land and machinery and things to be able to pay for that.
All right.
And so there was a main agent in Kabul who was then paying money to the sub-agent. So then, and then I traveled across Turkey. It was
so your mother had some kind of control over what was going on from afar, did she?
Yes and no. So what happens is the money is given to a third party by my family, and the third parties which are acceptable both to the smuggler, to the agent, and to my family. So the third party will pass on certain funds when I cross borders. But the issue is the grey area is my family cannot really know whether I have crossed borders or not. The agents, the smuggler could be lying or whatever, and they were very good at lying. I found out along the way. They never really told the truth. So there were occasions I will try to ask about my family and things from them, and they will just like saying, "Oh, everything is fine," but they never really made the effort to connect me to my family as such. Yeah. And so perhaps my mom would have been lied to on many occasions, and there was stories where people lost their lives. Many people lost their lives along the way. People were left behind, and even if you don't make it, if you die along the way, sadly, then your family still had to pay that money, and that's like really sad. But so I'm here. I survived because of those smugglers and traffickers. But if I had died, they wouldn't have cared less.
Yeah, they were a tool, really.
Yes, they were. But I think because they make sure they get you to your destination because it's about their reputation. They want to make sure they want to be seen as like good smugglers, good traffickers. Yeah, so it's a business. They saw me they saw me and my fellow refugees as a commodity. We weren't really seen as a human beings.
But totally about moving you like as freight, not as anything else. Like because you're here smuggling it with, I suppose, like sex abuse and stuff like that, especially from Eastern Europe and all this kind of stuff. But it was mainly just freight, was it? Like you are cargo. They need to take you from A to B, drop you off, and then B to C, and then so on and so.
Yeah, sure. There was exploitation was certainly there, but I think being able to have close bonds with being friends and having people, we were all in the similar boat. So we were kept in places like chicken coops, places where it was not for humans to live there. We were treated really badly, but at the same time, our dignity was not taken away in a sense that we stuck together. The people who supported me, I'm very grateful to them. They urged me on. But there are occasions that the smugglers will sell us to each other. Like there was situations where they had problems with our main smuggler or his representatives, and they will just sold us like cattle. And I felt like, it reminded me of being a shepherd. We always followed the smugglers like sheep, and they will tell us to sit down, we will sit down. They will tell us to move, we will move. So there was no question about any of our humans' agency, or again, as having been able to be, in some sense, not having a dignity whatsoever. So it was a terrible journey.
Does it still carry on in the same way?
It's actually worse now because the government makes it difficult for them to make the normal routes, and then so they make even more dangerous crossing. And so people dies. I was reading a report by UNHCR about 60,000 people has been killed in the last few years across the world, crossing from sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and other places. And so it's pretty bad. Things has not improved. I wish it was history. It's not history. My story, we don't see it in the media. The media is not talking about it. It doesn't mean the problem has disappeared. The Kale jungle has been dismantled. People are still coming there. The French police are burning people's jackets and people's blankets and shoes and tear gassing them with our British taxpayer money. Yeah. And then the situation with the European Union making a deal.
Because you're involved. This is not you just guessing. You're involved
real
with
stuff.
this
it's
now.
Facts. Yeah.
We've moved on. I know I jumped us there, but I'll just move us back again. I know you started on Turkey a second ago. I'm just going to move you through a little bit. So
sure.
Thousands of miles I'm moving you. Bulgaria and Greece. How did you get to Italy? Was that
So-
on foot through land, or was that over?
Sure. Before that, I mean, one of the hardest part of the journey was going through the Mediterranean and being in a boat full of 120 people, boat designed for 20, and we were in the sea
Right.
for almost 50 hours, and that was terrifying, and I was scared. I was really frightened.
50
and
hours.
50 hours in the sea, and we didn't have proper food or water. 3 days and 3 nights in the jungle, and then we didn't have proper food or water in the boat for 3 days and 3 nights. So we didn't have actually food or water for almost a week. So it was desperate situations. And when I see people drowning and people dying, that little boy Alan Kurdi images like resonates with people.
Yeah.
And so that happens on weekly basis, if not daily. And I could have been one of those people. That 10,000 people has been killed in the Mediterranean in the last 2-3 years. And it just breaks my heart. So anyways, I was lucky and I made it. I survived. A lot of people don't. And so when I made it to Italy, I was on the top of a lorry engine. And actually, this is the first time after being in prison in Greece, and I was almost in prison everywhere I went. I was treated really inhumanely by the authorities in
Like a
Greece.
criminal?
Yeah, indeed. So I was arrested in Bulgaria, deported back to Turkey, arrested in Turkey, in prison, deported back to Iran, and then I had to do it all over again. And so in Greece, after being released from prison, about 2 weeks in prison, we went to a place called Patra. And for the first time in about 9 months, I have heard about my brother from a smuggler, which was great.
Oh, wow.
And and he told me that my brother was heading to the UK. And so actually for the first time I knew where I needed to go. My destination was but I didn't know how to get there. And so I had to figure it out. And he helped me to get to Italy on the top of a lorry engine, which was really risky and
On
dangerous.
top of a lorry engine?
Literally, when I go, somehow I managed to get in there. It was really small confinement space. And he told me to hold on there, and I can come down when the lorry gets into the boat, if it does. And then thankfully, the lorry went to the boat after a few hours, and it was which was fine in the boat for about 3-4 hours. But then when he went back to the motorway in Italy, it was the tires were going so fast, the wheels. I thought I will, if I let go of my hands, I will be underneath the tires. So it was really scary situation. And I got the driver's attention a few hours later. And he thought there was some technical issue. So when he came, he was really shocked. So, yeah, I survived deaths on many occasions. And that was perhaps one of them.
Let me word it. There's many people in this country and across Europe that have no sympathy or empathy for anyone that's making any kind of crossing. And they see it as an invasion, and I'm not going to get into the politics about it, but just hearing then about a young 12-year-old, probably a skinny kid, really, very scared and running, clinging to the top of an engine. What? Without getting too political and just being very personal about it, what? And if you can do it in a sentence or a paragraph now, what would you say to those people? And I know many, and what would you?
I think it's difficult, but I want people to think, put themselves in our shoes. I mean, why would a mother send their 12 and 13-year-old sons away to the unknown? She has to be faced with extraordinary circumstances. I mean, my mother has sacrificed the most out of this. I've not seen her for 12 years, and so much has happened here and there. And so I would like people to think what if it was happening to them. And really this idea of making it political, it's a humanitarian crisis. And we're all human beings, and we have a lot in common. And I think, we all have hopes and dreams and ambitions. And I explain in the book that it wasn't my fault I was not born in Europe.
Yeah.
Where you're born is an accident of birth. And I would like people to think they're lucky, they're privileged, and they have those opportunities in living in a relatively peaceful country with so much goodness, and they should be willing to share their privileges with those less fortunate. And ultimately, I want to say to people who are anti-refugees is that we became refugees because of your government policies and interventions in most cases. The Afghans, the Iraqis, and most of the Syrians, for example, are as a result of Western military policies in those countries.
Agendas.
Indeed. And so if you intervene and you cause conflicts and wars, then you got to take responsibility. But ultimately, I think it's about a moral duty and a legal obligation to help and support those people and to show solidarity. I think I traveled across Britain in the last 3 years, and I see people have a lot of goodness. Majority of the people are very welcoming and are kind, but the issue is their silence or spectators. They sit on the sideline. They don't challenge the negative propaganda or the views by the right-wing media or by a few individuals. And those people who are mean and miserable, and they blame everything on migrants and refugees, is because they have never met a refugee.
Yeah.
But they just, whatever they hear from the media or from the right-wing politicians, people like to blame someone.
Yeah.
And we're an easy people to blame. And I think I want people to rethink and look into their conscience and to realize that we were faced with a desperate situation. And by welcoming us, that's a very honorable thing to do. And that's a very humane thing to do. And I think we all within ourselves have compassion. And we just need to find it.
Yeah.
We all have that goodness and humanity within us.
I'll come on to it in a bit, but, like, someone said, I heard something the other week about British values. And what is British values? What does it actually mean? And I think you touched on it there. And for me, and any kind of hate and non-acceptance, I think is in the minority, because I think British values does stand. If it stands for anything, it just stands for acceptance and tolerance, and that opportunity, but also the empathy and compassion that we can give people. But why was it the UK though?
Sure.
Why did you actually come to the UK?
That's a good question. I mean,
Because,
mainly I
sorry,
came because of my brother, and also because I was not welcome anywhere else. And I want people to realize that I went through 10 countries. I would have stayed anywhere where I was welcomed. I mean, the only exception was Italy, where I was treated humanely as a child and I was surprised that this kind of happened to me there all along the way. And so one of the reasons I was coming, and people who wants to come to the UK, they have reasons, either historical, either political or cultural reasons, linguistic reason or whatever. And ultimately, a lot of people believes that Britain is a place of tolerance. I mean, tolerance is not a word that I really like. I like acceptance. I think you're tolerating someone is like, oh, I don't like it, but I'm still tolerating. But I rather
I think tolerance, first tolerance, then acceptance.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
But I think people come to the UK for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes people think it's a place of equality, place of justice, and that's something we should be proud of.
Yeah.
But also we had to realize not everyone is coming here, and so the let's say the 100,000 people who entered Europe, or 1 million people entered in 2015, only 10,000 was in Calais. So 10,000 is a very small number of the 1 million. So when people say, we are being swamps are coming, or bunch of migrants and so on, it's not true. So a very small percentage people wants to come to the UK, and they have specific reason, either family, either cultural, or again they're not been welcomed anywhere else. Britain is seen as a generous place. Britain is seen, I mean, people forget about the colonization and the empire, and there are people in the past who used to be able to come easily from Commonwealth countries and from the empire, and now those people are not welcomed anymore. So people have all sorts of reasons and valid reasons, and I think we ought to be playing our fair share. I mean, we're not doing enough. We are the 5th or 6th richest country in the world, and it's a shame that, I mean, Germany has done better than us. Sweden and Canada and other countries, they have taken more refugees and supported more people. And I think we've been washing our hands of responsibility. We should be leading in this humanitarian crisis. And I feel sad of what's happening with the whole Brexit situation and how Britain is kind of rolling back from the world's affairs. And Britain is seen in the world as an important country, as an important
role model.
Role model, of course, for democracy and human rights and so on, even though with all the complexity that we have in terms of military involvements in places. But ultimately, Britain is really a beacon of hope. But actually now that's diminishing, and that's going away, and that makes me sad because I love Britain, I love the UK, and this is my second home. This is my adopted country.
How did you get across from France?
It was after 100 attempts in the back of lorries, and it was miserable. The humiliation in France, being arrested by the police. Calais was a very terrible place. It was worse than what I thought. I was there for a month, and until I wrote the book, I thought I was there for 3 months. That's how bad the conditions were.
Really?
Yeah, and then I thankfully managed to get across on a back of a refrigerator lorry. But if the driver had put on the freezer, we would have been killed on the last leg of our journey. So that's how desperate we were to leave that miserable place. And arriving in the UK, I felt a sense of relief and sense of freedom. But little did I knew that it was not the end. It was the beginning of an end, or the end of the beginning.
Yeah.
It was good to be here and safe and secure. And there were people who were trying to help and support me. But ultimately, the Home Office and immigration system we have is very dehumanizing.
Let's start there then. So 2007, you got into you made it to the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And if I say any words that are wrong,
no, please go ahead.
You then sought asylum, so you then applied for asylum, and then the process started. And I'll tell you what, I'll move us. 2007, you started the process. 2013, your status changed to status as a refugee,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that? 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
You then got refugee settlement, which means you've got.
I could potentially get a citizenship. Yeah.
Yeah. So 11 years there. Why is it? What is the process? Start from 2007.
So when people talk about like, oh, we're taking these people or asylum seekers, the process is very, again, it's very demoralizing. You are seen as a suspect, as a liar, as a criminal. So you basically, what I had to do was, I was a criminal and like I was guilty, but I had to prove myself innocent, and that's very difficult. Like the idea is you are innocent until proven guilty, but with the asylum system, you are guilty. You have to prove yourself innocent. So it was very difficult, and so it took me about 2 years to challenge social services and government on my age dispute. They did not believe I was 13 at the time.
Yeah.
They couldn't care about the traumas that I went through, the things that I have seen that we can't even imagine. And I had to grow faster to survive on this journey. And I had to become adult before my time becoming an adult. And then to go through the system, and then it took me some months to find my brother, which was really wonderful. But also, it took me 5 years. Well, it took the government 5 years to recognize that I was a genuine refugee. And that 5 years, I lived in limbo. And I have not lost hope on the journey, but I lost hope when I was here. And that's the sad thing. I mean, I want people to kind of realize and reflect on this, that I went through a hellish journey for 12 months.
Yeah.
I was treated so inhumanely that, I can't even describe. But then I was in the UK, I was safe, I was secure, but at the same time, the feeling of unwantedness, the feeling of not being valued or belong, it was really sad. So it took me 5 years to convince them. And then
convince them
that I was a genuine refugee, that I needed international protection.
And that you was the age you were saying you was?
Yeah, and then the age took 2 years to challenge. And then the funny thing was, they were actually kind of trying to negotiate with me my age. At some point, they said, okay, we will accept your day and month, but not the year. And I was like, great. My age is now up for negotiation. So it was really, the social services, people who were doing my age assessment were basically, I wouldn't be sitting here if they had their way. The government threatened to deport me twice to Afghanistan. Well, the funny thing was, they didn't even accepted my nationality. They said nationality unknown.
Right.
It was very insulting, actually. But at the same time, they were deporting me. And I was just wondering where they were deporting me to, because they didn't believe I was an Afghan. And so it was a really strange situation. So the Home Office really needs to, we saw with Windrush what's happening. The Home Office is really bad at making, decisions and being humane and compassionate. And yes, I understand you have to go through a system, and the system needs to give people the benefits of the doubt. It needs to treat people as human beings, not as some statistics and numbers and targets. And that's the unfortunate thing. So yeah, it's been a long journey for me.
So when you get it's beyond my reckoning. Do you know, like, to have your age questioned?
Yeah, and your nationality questioned, and your existence. I mean, the smugglers were somewhat better, at least. They were not questioning my existence or my foundation of who I was.
Yeah.
Even though they never really called me by my name, but they never really questioned that I was of a different age or a different nationality.
2000. So when did you end up in? Because you ended up in foster.
Yeah, foster family, which was a wonderful experience. This was 3 years later than I arrived. So that was in 2010, yeah. And I had a wonderful time with a couple, Sean and Karen in Bolton. And they provided me warmth, home and family and love, which I needed the most, and helped me to go through my GCSEs in my school. I mean, English is my fifth language, and I managed, once I was given the opportunity and chance after fighting for it, I managed to get 10 GCSEs, all ATCs. And I think when you give refugees a chance, they will contribute, they will learn. They will become active and global citizens. They will become useful citizens and play a positive and constructive role in society and their communities. I think, a lot of the time the Home Office and the government takes away people's rights and talents and stops them from achieving their full potential.
Did you do this potential with your brother as well? Did your brother... at this point, are you with your brother?
So my brother had a very different experience, actually. Sadly, he had to go back. The reason I went into foster family was, I found my brother a few months when I arrived in the UK. The government was not helping. They said, there were 65 million people in Britain. We can't potentially find your brother. I was giving him his name, his date of birth, except they've changed it, obviously. And so I found him through Faith in Fate, which is a wonderful story. And after I was wanted to live with him, the bureaucracy is really, really stresses you out, like literally. And so I was able to live with him finally after a few years, a year or so. And then he had to go back to Afghanistan to protect our mother, and our family was in a real danger. He risked his own life. we knew that our mothers, saved our lives, but we had a responsibility to protect her. So he had to go back and try to live there for 3 years, and then he was kidnapped, he was tortured, and he had a very tough life there. The Taliban kind of telling him that Gulwali, need to return back.
Really?
Because of my public image here and the things that I've been doing and stuff, literally been seen a challenge to them, and they're like, not only am I not fighting, not only protecting my family honor and my country's honor, but I become friends with infidels and friends with the enemy. And so he had a very tough life there, and then thankfully he managed to come back again. He have seen things that I have not seen. He have experienced hardship more than I have.
Really?
And now we live together. He's going through a difficult...
Is he back?
He's back. He came back in 2014, and he's going through a breakdown mental health-wise. He's been seeing a psychiatrist and been going through counseling, and he have a child and a wife back home, and his situation is terrible. And unfortunately, it makes me really angry and sad as well that the Home Office doesn't believe in him again. The Home Office is treating him as a criminal, and not understanding the situation that he has faced and what we have faced. So, I'm an international advocate and campaigner for refugees' rights, and I travel to like 15 countries. My book is published in 8 languages in 7 countries. Doesn't really mean anything to the Home Office, and so the Home Office still not believe him, and he's in a legal limbo for the last 4 or 5 years.
Because, you've just said it then. I want you to elaborate on it. So we've got. And there's things I've never heard of. I've never heard of refugee settlement, never. But what we hear all the time is illegal immigrant and migrant.
Sure.
When I say that word to you, illegal immigrant, what do you think?
I think my view is nobody is illegal. People could be undocumented. People might not have the right documents. We all have rights to our agency and decency. We all have rights to be treated with dignity and respect. And sometimes when you don't have the right documents, you don't have the right documents because of circumstances and situation out of your control. I would love for people to come here legally and come here through legal and civilized and safe routes, but that's not available to people. The UK law says that you can only claim asylum when you are on the land. How do you get on the land if you don't come here through illegal means? I came here through illegally, but I'm not an illegal. I was an undocumented, and by claiming asylum, the international law gives me the right, gives anybody, including yourselves, to claim asylum if you need to, And so nobody's really illegal. And I think when people talk about illegal migration or migrants, in general, they take away people's humanity and people's agency, and at the same time, they take away their. They don't want to deal with the question of refugees, because if you're a refugee, then the government have an obligation and a moral duty to support and help you. But then if they just brush you with like being a migrant, then they don't have the same responsibility towards you. And it's easy for governments actually to use those terms. And I think language matters. You've got to use the right language for the right people. Being a migrant, there's nothing wrong being a migrant. You could be a student, you could be an economic worker, migrants, you could be just migrating for whatever reasons. But those are very honorable things for people to do. But at the same time, being a refugee, the UK government, the rest of the government who have signed up to the Geneva Convention on refugees protection, they ought to protect you. But then the easy way for them is like, oh, you're not a refugee. And once they dispute you, once they put your credibility under question, there's very little you can do, because you don't really have evidence to prove anything really, because you don't bring papers with you don't bring evidence. So I would say people need to use responsible terms, and people just need to treat people as people and realize, being a refugee is just a legal definition. I'm more than that. I'm a student, I'm an activist, and I'm an author, and sometimes people just take away their rights to be normal human beings, and so I encourage people to read into it and to understand the differences.
It's easy to pigeonhole though as well, isn't it? It's easy to pigeonhole someone, like put someone in a little box, but then it's actually opening the box and finding a little bit more about that person.
Everybody has stories. Everyone is an individual. There are refugees who are very successful people, who are doctors, engineers. Just like talk to them and find out. I think going for a coffee or tea with them is a great way of finding out. And I think once you meet people personally and talk to them, that your misconceptions will go away. Don't put everybody in the same box. Don't brush everyone with this. Like sometimes when supposedly refugees commit a crime, then everyone is blamed. And anybody could commit a crime. It's a human thing. It's wrong, but then you shouldn't be blaming the whole refugees for example, like the whole of Muslim population and some Muslim committing a crime. And I think people just need to realize and question their rationale behind it and their logic behind it. So I hope, people will go and do their research, read into refugee stories and see them as a fellow human beings.
I mean, you are really passionate about it, and it comes across here today in the conversations we've had previous, and the work that you do almost day to day. Tomorrow you're in a school in the Midlands, speaking all day to different age groups about it. Do you always stay positive?
I used to be very angry and bitter, and I thought that wasn't a solution. I think I have a very sad story, negative story, and almost all refugee does. But I think I feel like I need to use it for something positive, for positive outcome. I want to empower people and inspire them, inform them. I want them to be better educated about the issues and challenges that we face in the world, and I want people to be, more compassionate and to show solidarity with refugees and to stand up for what's right, to stand up for human rights and social justice. And I try to stay positive because I think positivity is important, because then that way you can actually empower people to do things and take action and take social action and to help those in need.
You drink?
Yeah, I've not been feeling well today.
What's the book called?
The book is called The Lightless Sky, and it was first published in 2015 in the UK and then subsequently been published in the States, France, Germany, excuse me, Italy, Romania, China, and I've been traveling to raise awareness about the refugee cause and trying to be a spokesperson for refugees and a human voice for the statistics and number that we hear in a human face. It hasn't been easy, but I feel like it's been worthwhile in speaking up and encouraging people to think differently. I mean, as I said, the majority of the people in Britain are very welcoming. They're willing to host refugees in their homes, but they just need to come out and speak out and write to their MPs and be active and support local charities who support refugees. I mean, Britain, less than 1% of our population is refugees. I mean, when people say, oh, everyone is coming here, less than 1% of our population is refugees. We are 23rd in the world for taking in refugees. The 1 in 9 people from refugee backgrounds are in Europe. 9 of them are in developing countries. Yeah. And so not everyone is coming here. That myth and those negative stereotypes and the false statements needs to be challenged, because yes, we have done good, we've taken refugees, but we have not taken our fair share. There was about 100,000 refugees in Europe. We were supposed to take 100,000 unaccompanied minors, actually, children without their parents and family. We were supposed to take 3,000 under the Dubs Amendment, and then we only took 300 and made a U-turn on it. So I think
this Alf
Dubs, yeah, an amazing guy who himself came through the Canada Transport, and he have done incredible things. And when refugees are given the chance, they will become like Lord Dubs and they will contribute to society. But anyway, so we took only 300, and the government made a U-turn on it. And actually, recently there was a court ruling which says the government was needed to take their responsibility in bringing the people. So that 3,000 was a very small number of the 100,000. And so we forget about doing our fair share, but we're not even doing the minimum. We are taking 20,000 Syrian refugees in 5 years. That's great, but that's very little. There are 12 million There are 12 million displaced and refugee people in Syria, and we're only doing a very small. Yes, we do a lot to help countries who are hosting it. Britain has given more money to Jordan, to Lebanon, and to Turkey and other places, which is great, but it's not enough. People struggle to provide. The UNHCR struggles to provide food for those refugees in the camp in Jordan.
I think you've really touched on something then, and I didn't realise. And I'm an admirer from afar of Alf Dubs, and you look at what I said earlier on about values and about an opportunity, to life, which is what he had. I suggest anyone. I'll put some notes on him because he's an amazing character.
Indeed.
And, you've had an opportunity for life.
Sure. It was a struggle. I had to fight for it.
It is. But there's that opportunity then, and there's parallels with both of you, and then that's led to again that tolerance, then it's acceptance, and then it's actually creating something.
Sure. I'm very grateful to Britain and to its people. People have supported me. I am where I am because of people supporting me and believing in me and going through school and college and in graduating. I never thought, going to university and then to graduate from Manchester Uni, and then now I'm doing my master's at Coventry. And a lot of amazing things has happened. I carry the Olympic torch. I've spoken at the UN, at the EU, and I have been able to influence policy makers and decision makers, and all those things has been amazing. And so I'm very grateful, and I feel a sense of gratitude. People tell me, Gulwali, you don't owe it to no one. But I feel like I owe it to the British public. I mean, they have supported me being, going through the fostering system. The British taxpayer paid for me, but at the same time, I've been giving back to society as much as I could through my youth voice, youth activism, and youth participation work. I've been involved from a very early stage with the British Youth Council, with the UK Youth Parliament and other charities, and I've been part of many different charities as a trustee, as a commissioner, and been working, trying to work on, for example, on child poverty, youth unemployment, not only issues relating to asylum seekers and refugees, but generally to young people, because it's great to be able to have a voice, and I've been using my voice and been trying to do good in this country, and trying being a law-abiding citizen, and people, when they're given the chance, they will become Lord Dubs. And Lord Dubs, I had the honor of sharing stage with him on many times, and he's just an incredible guy, and I just get inspired by his story and his struggles. But at the same time, we could by giving young refugees the opportunity to learn, to get educated, they will ultimately at some point may go back to their countries and rebuild it and play a constructive and useful role. And that's something Britain should be proud of. I think we are very good. We have really good education institutions, and we need to allow people. I mean, asylum seekers are not even allowed to work. They have to live on £36 a week. That's like £5 a day. We need to allow them to work. There was a report out. If we allowed asylum seeker to work, they can contribute 40 million or so to the economy. Yeah. And so, those are people who have skills, and they just not been able to work. They've been isolated, dehumanized, and their agency has been taken away from them. And we have a lot of terrible things. We need to allow them to learn, to be able to work. And there's been a campaign around lifting the ban and working for asylum seekers. And we have some terrible laws around family reunification. And finally, there's things around detention. We're the only country in the EU who detain people indefinitely. We don't have a time limit. We literally put people in prisons when they went through so much trauma. They have seen enough of persecutions and injustice. And then here we are, a country priding itself in human rights and democracy, and then we treat people terrible. And that's, people need to know about those things and get involved and stay engaged and make a difference.
I feel like we've had a good balance there of the reality, almost declassifying some of those myths, some negative stuff, some positive stuff. But in just one word, you have one word now to kind of sum up what Afghanistan means to you.
Afghanistan means everything to me. I miss Afghanistan. It's where I belong. It's
one word.
I feel
home.
Home, yeah. Actually, home is where you feel welcome. I mean, Britain is home.
Yeah.
But Afghanistan will always be home. Actually, so that's maybe one word. Afghanistan will always be home. But I hope to see it peaceful. I hope to see it people living a peaceful life and not being forced to flee the way I did. And yeah.
I really appreciate your time, and we will leave it there.